IVM.
Hey, welcome to Shunya One, episode 34, wrapping up 2017. And wow, this is the first year of us doing this podcast,
Yes,
of course. And
this is your first year as a podcaster. What do you think of the experience?
I'm loving it.
Yes.
I think I've discovered my radio voice, amongst other things. And
the second you say radio voice, all our older guests are laughing off their asses.
yes, of course. But it's been great, Amit. I mean, thanks so much for letting me do this. I think we've had some brilliant guests over the last few months.
I think we've had we've got a really, really solid lineup of guests, I think. I mean, just the people who we've been able to ask to come and who have been happy to show up has been really cool. And I mean, like, it's been across all kinds of things, right? We've had people from the VC world, we've had people from the e-com world, we've had people from the startup world, conferences, I mean, like, all kinds of stuff, games. I mean, like, wow. I think we've
pretty much covered every topic.
Okay, all right.
Technology touches.
Show done. No?
No.
Okay.
But wow, I think as the recap, right? We were going through the kind of feedback we've gotten, the kind of topics we've covered, and I think there's a bunch of stuff the year had in store which we should touch upon in terms of just going back and obviously looking up ahead as to the kind of guests we'll also have coming up ahead. So what do you think? What's Slack been saying lately, and what do you think our guests want to listen to?
Well, so Slack's been a little quiet this week, guys. Just because it's a holiday doesn't mean that we can't chat on Slack. But we did have a interesting conversation which was initiated by Abhishek Balaji, who, well, I don't know how interesting this will be for other people, but it was very interesting to me because he was asking about, can we have a small chat on advertising preferences for podcast listeners? What are your thoughts on ads inserted into podcasts? Do you skip them? Are there lesser friction than ads on YouTube?
Interesting, actually.
Some podcast apps like Overcast allow ads only for other podcasts. Their idea is that the ad should be relevant to the listeners. Can music apps like Savan also follow the same model? And then VS Vivek responded to that, saying there was a recent survey by Neiman's Lab stating people preferred listening to native ads where the presenter reads out the ad rather than overlay ads. There have been many articles talking about how people don't skip the ads when they're listening at 1.5x or more speed. Ads and podcasts are a tricky segment. There was a post on Stratechery about the ads and business model. You should check that as well. So I think just to give a little insight from my own side, right, I think that there are different types of ways of advertising on podcasts, right? And some of the interesting, the inserted ad. So I mean, like, there are two kinds of ads. One is your standard inserted ad.
Right.
That's an ad which you charge a certain number for. It's based on. It's just something.
It's just a slot. Right?
It's just a slot.
Exactly.
Slot. It's the same way you'd sell a radio ad.
Right.
And then there is the stuff where you do, which is a little more involved, where you get the host involved. You have the host read this, do the ads. It's more integrated into the content itself, right? And for that, you charge you charge more for that. Right? So it's more of a premium kind of thing. But it's an interesting and there's definitely less friction in ads on podcasts than compared to YouTube because the number of ads that people have to get across is actually quite low, right? On an average, a 1 hour podcast might have 1 or 2 ads, depending on the show itself. I mean, like, the most I've ever heard is 4.
Really?
Yeah, I've heard 4.
I haven't heard.
They do 4 on 2 shows that I can think of. One is on the Ringer Bill Simmons podcast. He has one. He has ads up front and he has 2 breaks and then he has ads at the end. And then the other one is the Adam Carolla podcast. They do a lot of ads as well. But mostly you'll generally just see a couple, right? I mean,
I've actually liked the native ads which Leo Laporte does on Twitter.
Those are great. I love those. I mean, like, unfortunately, they don't have Audible ads anymore, but Audible ads used to be best on those. They used to have, like, book club recommendations and stuff like that. So for people just sitting around saying, what was the greatest book that they read? And that was an Audible ad. I used to love those.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's also the kind of stuff which is unique to podcasting.
It is. It absolutely
something
is.
you can't really do on video, you can't do anywhere else. So
there are some host reads that do happen on video. I mean, like, it depends on the format of the show, but podcasting is podcasting or even old time radio, right? I mean, like, this stuff all comes from old time radio,
right.
And that is that's a place where this kind of host read ad is kind of, it's just a tradition. People just expect it. And the cool thing about it is, and the reason why it works so well is also people don't what they were saying, right? Nobody skips.
Right.
On a host read ad, you can't skip because you don't know when the host is going to get from ad to content and content to ad.
Right.
So it kind of just goes.
Yeah, and in fact, that as an interesting first topic to talk about, right?
Yeah.
Podcasting, even though we were the ones doing it, I mean, I was the one doing it for the first time this year.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's opened my eyes to a whole lot of podcasting happening in India and worldwide, right? It's taken up quite a bit of mindshare in terms of people's attention towards podcasts.
It absolutely has. I mean, like, in terms of media, right? I mean, like, okay, so I'm going to give the general spiel that I give at like every place I go and give spiel at. But when you look at media just generally, right, you almost always see you've seen over the last 20 years this shift from a broadcast model to an on-demand model, right, where what people basically want to listen to or watch or read or whatever it is, they want to click a button, they want to get it. And podcasting brings that to the audio, the audio industry. Right. And so it's kind of, in some ways, it started off as just kind of taking radio and putting it online, right? But as it's evolved, what we've realized is that the strengths of the internet that exist are kind of built into this, right? The internet is a place of niches. So what happens with this is that when you have like this 100,000 watt radio station which has to transmit to 100 kilometer radius, then I mean you're trying to hit everybody. But when what you're trying to do is you're trying to just talk to a few people, you can make shows which are much more specific, like this show, Shunya One, for a techie audience. Yeah. We don't dumb things down. We don't, I mean, like, if you look at tech coverage in like mainstream media generally, it's like speeds and feeds are. I mean, like, at this point in time, it's more like 5.5 inch screen versus 5.7 inch screen. But I mean, like, that's kind of where in mainstream media the technology kind of thing is. There are obviously exceptions, but I mean, like, that's kind of where it is. Podcasting lets you get deeper.
Yeah, but interesting that you mentioned that, because one of the things which did happen this year, which we were going to talk about, is actually about how bezels are going away.
Yes, they are.
And that's sort of changed the way we experience our phones, right?
It does.
Whether it's bezels, whether it's AR, all these new tech in sort of technologies which have come into mobile have also sort of shaped the way we use technology, we use our phones, right?
Absolutely. I mean, like, bezels are incredible, right? I mean, like, the fact that they've shrunk to the point that they have, one is a marvel of engineering, right? I mean, like, the fact that you can get rid of everything and just put the screen on top is kind of amazing in and of itself. But yeah, you're right. The way that you interact with your phone without a bezel, with a phone with...
I mean, it started with no keyboards with the iPhone, but now it's nothing. And it's pretty much everything's based on the camera, gestures, and so on.
Yeah. So, even the iPhone's gotten rid of the button too.
Yeah. So that was one of the interesting things that happened this year. And I think 2018 will show us a lot more on how we will change the way we further interact with phones, especially with AR. I think gestures are going to be a huge thing. I think facial gestures are definitely, I mean, although the iPhone...
You think that's going to happen in this year?
I think so. I think the iPhone 10 is just using it for fun right now, but I can imagine myself looking at a phone and, the phone knowing what I want to do with it in a lot of ways.
Really?
Not just gestures. Add to that voice, right?
Right.
So we're already seeing voice.
Voice is huge. Yeah, I mean, like, I get voice to a greater degree. See, I understand gestures as a interface kind of thing. It makes some sense to me. I don't know if phone is the place where that would happen, right? I think that kind of more happens in the wearable space and stuff like that.
I think it's just a single small window interface, right? You look at it, do something, wave your hand, talk to it, whatever you have to make it do.
Right.
I think it can, right? Change the page, turn the page, play next song, whatever.
Yeah.
Depends on how you use it. Take a picture, smile, take a selfie.
I mean, like, yeah. I mean, like, there was the Connect with the Xbox, right? But that was fairly clunky in the sense of what you could
because
do.
it was restricted to a gaming interface.
Right. Yeah.
But with productivity or with things which you normally do with your phone, right? I can already see myself using voice a lot more.
I use voice a lot already.
Just because it's now works very well, right?
Exactly. I use voice all the time. Okay, Google, ask IMDb to open IMDb and find me XYZ page.
You just woke my phone up.
Oh wow. Okay, I think I did that to everybody.
So, yeah, exactly, and not to mention obviously voice in the home, right? With Alexa and Google Home and so on. Even that's something which I'm not really sure is going to go widespread, but I think everyone's going to have one, or most early adopters of tech already do.
So, I wouldn't be surprised if it did in some ways really take off, right? I mean, one of the things that happened this last year, which really, really surprised me, I mean, like when I first heard about it, I mocked it incessantly, very honestly, which is the Saregama Karvan.
Oh, yeah.
When I first heard about it, I'm like, are you kidding me? Why would anybody do this? Why not just get a smartphone and put Savan on it?
Yeah.
That to me seems like this. But it's really done well for them. I mean, like it's all over the place. I know that it's in 3 of my families.
Exactly,
extended
right?
families.
So it's about addressing a market which we think is quickly adopting and switching over, but they
apparently
prefer.
not. But I feel like it kind of brings this. It's fairly close to a Alexa. I feel like so. I'm thinking of the 2 uncles specifically who have them right now. For me to ask them to use, they don't even use Uber, right? I mean, like at this point in time, they use Uber, but the way they use Uber is they call their sons and say, "Hey, can you book me an Uber and send it to me?" So I mean, like, but if they could use their voice, right, and say, play me some songs from R.D. Burman, or play me, I think that is something that I think that they would be much more apt to use.
It's an interface they're already used to.
Exactly. I think that's something they're much more apt to use than something like putting an iPad up there with connected to a smart speaker or something like that.
Right.
Because I tried that. I've done that for both of them. I got both of them iPad minis, and
they don't use them.
They don't use them. They're just lying there. So I took them back. But,
interesting. No, so that's exactly right. So the fact that voice was always an interface we were used to, visually communicating with someone, like basically you're going to make these devices another person you're interacting with.
No, also for I mean, like just audio consumption, right? Not just music, even things like play me hey, tell me what's going on in the world today.
Yeah,
and newscast comes out.
Yeah.
I mean, like just from that perspective, and also eventual connection to smart home.
Of course.
Right.
So I think that's already there. It's just that the actual hardware of smart homes, and I've seen a lot of this over the years, I think that's just not.
It's not where it needs to be. Yeah, it's not where it needs to be. But I think
there's no one de facto standard everyone buys. It's just too crowded a market still. That's where that's not working out so much.
Yeah, I buy that. I completely buy that. I think that
but it works. So for people who have like Philips Hue or something, it works.
I mean, like my brother has what's the thermostat that Google bought, which the guy just quit. Tony Fidel was the name of the guy. Nest,
of course.
So my brother has that Nest thermostat at his house, right? And it works perfectly with his I think, Google Home.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, that's powerful, I think, right?
They have a camera too. They have all sorts of gadgets. Yeah. So the point is, if your society or India is a lot of people are still traditional with their homes. I think they're just about letting external services and folks like that in with their app. So I think it's going to be a while.
It is.
It's still easier to call a guy and get stuff done. If a smart home switch breaks, I don't know what people will do. So they still want the fallback on a flip switch.
That is true. But aren't most of these smart home switches, don't they just kind of work on the
most of them, but still need a little bit of retrofitting.
Yeah, I guess so. True.
So that's going to be a while, maybe. But definitely voice for content, voice for productivity.
Yeah.
I definitely see happening.
No, I see voices. So people talk about what are the next interfaces, right? So I mean, like AR is one that has been discussed ad nauseum as like, the next great big interface. But I think voice is equally powerful in many ways.
VR, what do you think of VR? VR, I still feel every year I meet another VR startup.
Yeah.
And I don't see it still in consumer hands yet.
They're
doing great stuff for B2B.
That's exactly. I see the space for VR as B2B, and I see the space for VR as gaming. I'm sure there will be other things that come out, but it doesn't feel like it has the same wide range applicability that something like that AR would have, right? Because one is you're completely immersed.
Yeah.
Right. So there's no interaction with the real world.
Yeah.
So by definition, when you're not interacting with the real world, I mean, like you're kind of limited in what you're by definition working in a virtual world. Now, we might come to the Ready Player One world where VR is awesome and everybody wants to spend all their time in VR. But I don't think that we're anywhere close to being in that kind of space now. And I honestly think that would be a disaster for humanity if we were in that kind of space.
That's what Mark Zuckerberg wants, though.
Well, Mark Zuckerberg
wants you to
many
just
things.
plug yourself in and be on Facebook.
Yeah, but see, I mean, like, that's just not. I mean, like, hey, as much as I love tech and as much as I like all this kind of stuff, I mean, like, we're still people, right? I mean, like, we still need to exist in meat space.
Let's find out how long that lasts. but coming to what's powering all this, I think coming back to a little more India-specific story about what happened this year. Beyond, I think when we ended the year, we were just talking about demonetization and all that, and fintech, and obviously food tech, which is our
food tech
favorite.
We had a food tech guy on.
Yes. But all of the stuff powering all this is data, right?
Yeah.
Data consumption is up. People have GBs free from Geo.
Every day.
People have, obviously the other guys have caught up. Everyone's giving, like, I have too many, I have data I don't finish now.
Dude, I have, I think, like 80 GB of usable data left on my Airtel right now.
Okay, that's a way more than me. But I was thinking 20s and 30s on my phone,
so, I mean, like,
plus 100 odd at home and work and all that.
They
right?
give
so
me
there's more than enough data.
Yeah,
basically.
so they give me like 100, they give me like something like 60 GB a month. And I don't use more than 2030. So then 2030 keeps carrying forward every month.
That's
Right now I was looking at
ridiculous.
I have 80 GB on my Airtel right now. And Airtel is fast, man.
Yeah.
I'm thinking I should like do some...
No, I hotspot on Airtel. So it's basically there's more than enough data.
Yep.
For folks who already were heavy users, they have, like us, we have more than enough.
Yeah.
For people who had none, have at least a few GB for free.
Exactly.
So data is big. Everything's powered by data. All of the stuff we're talking about is happening because there's data on our phones, there's data at home.
So I read something a couple of days ago, maybe a week ago or so, that India has now overtaken both the US and China as the place where most data is being used in the world. That's amazing. I love that. Considering where we came from and how fast this stuff has grown, I mean, like
just a year. I think it turned around in a year.
So it was last year in April or something like that. Not 2017, 2016 in April, where I paid a ridiculous roaming bill for data because my mom used data inside somewhere else. And like it was a ridiculous. I can't even conceive of that anymore because back then I started making calculations. Right, these guys had this ridiculous 10 KB per unit that they were charging on.
Yeah,
and it was like $1,000 an MB or something like that. Something ridiculous like
That's
that.
still there in some international roaming parts.
This was not international. This was domestic.
Oh wow,
but
that's
it was
ridiculous.
yeah, it was insane. It was just
And
absolute.
Alongside that, I think we were looking at a stat which has also shown that Wi-Fi hotspots have gone up.
They have tremendously.
But then if you have so much data, why would you use one?
Why would you use a hotspot? Because, I mean, like, one, why use your data when you can use somebody else's? That's the first thing. And listen, I mean, like, as good as the mobile operators have been in providing data, their network still has issues.
Yeah.
I mean,
I fall back on Wi-Fi wherever
I fall
can.
back on
That's
Wi-Fi quite often as well. I mean, like, yesterday...
Airports even.
Yeah, I was out somewhere yesterday and I got
Starbucks
down
even.
and I had to shut my phone off and turn it back on to get my data connection. So...
Yeah. And it drains battery. So, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But what do you think is the impact of all this in India at large, right? I know we've spoken about how music consumption's gone up, video's gone up. Video is probably the one big chunk
Videos exploded, music's exploded. All content is exploding, right? I think what I think this does when we're giving, if we have a baseline that every person in this country is going, right now that baseline is probably like 2 GB or 3 GB or something like that per month, right? But if you get that...
I think it's lower. I really don't think people are at
Really,
one.
I think that most of these plans now are like any...
All
like,
the free geo plans?
Yeah, all the free geo plans, even Airtel and stuff like that. I mean, like, even if you have a very basic data plan, like a 50 rupee a month data plan is still like multi-GBs for that.
Oh, wow.
So, so I mean, like, I think that the fact that there is so much data available, if we can get that baseline up to like, maybe 50, 60 GB a month, right? That's what the average person in India is getting. If at that point in time, I think a lot of content, basically consumption shifts from television to online.
Personal devices, mobile.
I'm already seeing that to a great deal in my own house, anecdotally, of course. But I mean, like, my mom is on YouTube and Hotstar all day.
Wow.
She hardly ever turns the television on anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, she turns it on because she can Chromecast to it. So I mean, like, you know, but I mean, like, again, it's that same thing, right? The on-demand versus broadcast. She can watch what she wants to when she wants to, instead of having to watch it at the time that is specified on, and that's what she prefers.
Yeah.
So I think that we're going to start seeing a lot of transference of people's behavior from consuming content in the ways that they are right now into completely different. And besides that, I think. So, I mean, like, that's one. Content is one. And I mean, I'm obsessed with content, which is why I think I'm talking about content first. But I mean, like, there are much more important things than just content consumption that will happen with this abundance of data, right? All of a sudden, so all these different. So one is, I mean, like, people having so much data means that different ideas are going to start coming out. People are going to be much more connected to each other. You're going to start seeing a lot more in terms of startups and stuff like that are doing really interesting things. Right. Because also startups which. In India, it was always a thing that when you're thinking of a startup to think about, make sure that whatever you think about doesn't use too much data. That restriction's gone now, right?
Finally, that's gone.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, if that's gone, that kind of opens up the thinking, the ability of people to think about different things.
Yeah. People, like, hopefully, long term, people will not be switching data off on their phones, which was a very...
It was. I mean, like, people used to do it all the time. I mean, like, it was, okay, turn it off, turn it on. Turn off. Yeah. So, I mean, like, that would be a great...
Although it is tied with the battery story, right? So, unless batteries get a little better and more stable.
So, what do you think of fast charging?
Oh, I love it.
Yeah. Do you think that is a substitute for capacity?
Probably.
Yeah.
But then, not too many portable chargers.
But if that is the substitute for capacity, then I think that will start playing out, right?
Interesting, yeah.
But cause, I mean, like, I got the new Nexus and not the old Nexus, new. I newly got the old Nexus, but that has fast charging on it.
Yeah,
and
the Pixel has fast charging.
The Pixel, sorry, I meant the Pixel, not the Nexus. Yeah, so it has fast charging on it. It's really fast. So even my older phone supposedly had fast charging on it, but it was still like a good 35-40 minutes to charge it. This thing I plug in for 10 minutes and it's gone from like 25% to like 75-80%.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, that's a big...
whole bunch of...
So that tells me, I mean, to me, at least for my own personal use, that kind of has eliminated some of the battery issues.
Yeah, if you're not in the field all day, I think you can work this out. But just another point on data, and this is maybe going a little off topic.
We're all off topic.
Off tech also, right? Data, while becoming this sort of a backbone for everything we do in our lives, especially in India, it's still controlled by the telcos, and to an extent now we've seen that you can shut mobile data off. Like, people have done it. Some states have done it.
Right.
Like, it's happened in Kashmir, it's happened in Gujarat. Yeah. And it's happened to, like, people I know. Suddenly they're in, I think just a few weeks ago it was Udaipur.
Yep.
And a friend of mine landed and basically was incommunicado because, hey,
no data.
Mobile networks are off.
Yeah. So it's
it's sort of like a very the more important it becomes, the more problematic also when it's taken away, right?
And I mean, like, I think so. We've seen this a couple of times, right?
Really?
Over this year and last year, where where various local governments have cut internet.
Yeah.
Mostly always under the guise of, hey, we want to stop WhatsApp forwards from people, and we want to make sure that people don't congregate and stuff like that. But, I mean, like, you're right. I mean, the more deeply integrated it becomes into our lives, how do you turn it off, right? Right now, would we accept anybody saying that, okay, we're going to shut electricity for XYZ reason? No, we would not, right?
Exactly.
I think this is the same thing. I think we're on the cusp where it becomes that kind of utility where it is necessary for everybody, no matter what, and no matter.
And no one can really come in and say, "Hey, shut this down," unless they have like massive legal recourse.
I also think that it'll become a vote issue. I really do. Yeah. If you are somebody who keeps shutting off mobile data, that is a campaign issue for the opposition.
Oh yeah.
And I think that becomes, and in some ways, that's actually a good because that way at least you have one party, the opposition party, whoever that may be, or whatever state that may be, on record saying that they support that this should not be shut off.
until they need it to be
they needed to be shut off. But at least you got them on record so you can point to them, hey, I thought you said. But then...
when
I
does that ever work?
I know. I'm trying to...
But it's a funny thing. We spent some time, I think, over the conversations talking about sort of the political aspects of technology. Mm-hmm. And one of the other things which also came up recently is net neutrality.
It is.
And net neutrality is something which we can, is also a topic which sort of resonates with the whole political side of handling technology.
It really is. It's a difficult topic for me particularly. I find it to be really tough to talk about net neutrality.
I think we should get some folks from the net neutrality brigade in India in the coming episodes. I think
we should actually get
especially in context to stuff happening in the US and so on.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? I mean, I think that what's happening in the US in terms of net neutrality is not the worst thing in the world, right? Even though a lot of people feel that it's a major problem. I think the way India is handling net neutrality is the right way to do it, right? We have laws written specifically about net neutrality and what is required and what are the expectations from the telcos, what are the expectations from the CDNs, what are the expectations from all the various players in the ecosystem. Whereas what's happening in the US is a little more kind of like, okay, let's take the laws that were written for cable television and let's apply them to internet.
Yeah.
And
like most things, I think with the current US government, they're just trying to run through a list very quickly and not doing a good job.
Yeah, I'm much more uncomfortable with what's happening over there, right? I mean, because the laws that they're applying, right, these are basically called Title II laws. And these even, even though during the Obama administration, Tom Wheeler, who was the chairman of the FCC, he mentioned the fact that we're not going to use this law as broadly as we could, but that's him at that point in time. The second that law is the one that applies, we have a problem, right? And that law is so broadly kind of structured, it even allows the government to control what content is there, and that is, I get slippery slope and all that kind of, those arguments are not always the strongest arguments, but nonetheless, I feel like what needs to happen in the US is what's happened in India, which is...
I think India really did a good job.
They did a good job. They got it right? I mean, okay, you cannot discriminate against from the origin. You cannot do this. I mean, they have carved out exceptions for CDNs, but CDNs are also only allowed to work in certain areas.
Yeah.
They've kind of done it the right way, right? I mean, they've carved out exceptions for IPTV, right? If you want to run an IPTV service, you're going to need a different degree of this. So, I mean, they've carved out the exceptions they need to, but they've kept it overall broadly enough so that it can innovation is not going to get stifled. I feel what's happened over there is a lot more complicated than people make it out to be, and people just make it out that we're pro-net neutrality, so we must be pro-net neutrality, and pro-net neutrality is good. It's not that simple.
I think let's hope it does find the right place. Yeah. And let's take a quick break and come back and chat some more.
Hi, I'm May, and I'm a huge fan of the indie music scene in our country, a scene that's relatively underground, even though it sometimes speaks its head overground, but there's no shortage of talent, and I get the privilege of interviewing some of the most awesome musicians on my show. I've had the likes of Euphoria, Krish Kale, Hardcore, Randolph Correa. I've had singer-songwriters, folk singers, electronic music producers, playback singers, rappers, fusion artists, instrumentalists, classical musicians, and so on. Whether mainstream or not, these people have chosen to release their original music, and these are the people currently shaping the direction in which our music scene is heading. Join me on my show every Monday and tune in to discover the unique talent coming out of India today. You can catch Made in India on your favorite podcasting app or our very own IVM podcast app.
Hey, welcome back to the show, and we're back, me and Amit, doing our usual banter, but this time a whole episode of it. So I hope you guys are having fun. Coming to another off-tech topic, but again has its roots in tech, since we spoke about this, which has happened in India, is Aadhaar.
Yeah.
And India Stack, and UPI. And
I, for one, welcome my Aadhaar overlords.
And everything that the government is doing pro-tech, right? I mean, seriously, I think, and we spoke about this a number of times, that the government has been a very good tech partner.
They have.
To a bunch of things in India this year.
Here's my question to you. Do you have an Aadhaar card?
Yes, I do.
You do? Okay.
I got one finally.
You got one finally.
But listen, all said and done about the way they are handling it, about security issues, the objective is pretty interesting.
The objective is interesting, and I agree. Security issues are a problem.
They're going to happen. People have been asking me for Aadhaar for random reasons, and I have been saying, hell, why?
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, like, and that's, you're enlightened enough and knowledgeable enough to know that you don't need to give it everywhere, every which place, right? Not everybody's going to be that. And I get that there are problems with it. I understand that. I mean, like, I get that people are unhappy with having to link bank account to Aadhaar and this to Aadhaar and that to Aadhaar. But I also worry, I also think that...
I think it's one of those things which, notwithstanding the fact that it's probably horribly managed and there are issues and there's leaky and so on, there have been data problems. But it's another number.
Yeah.
It's like PAN.
Yeah.
It's another number.
It's better than PAN because PAN was only taxpayers, no? This is everybody.
Exactly. This is everyone. So... it works. It will probably be misused anyway, even if the laws existed to curtail it, right?
There is going to be misuse. Any kind of identity system is going to have misuse. There's no doubt about it. Maybe in this case also, some of the stuff that's being done, maybe about it. In this case also, some of the ways that it's being exploited is not right.
Including, by the way, have you noticed if you go to sign up on Facebook today, they ask you for enter your name as per your Aadhaar card.
Really?
Yes. So you should sign out of Facebook and try signing up for a new account. And they have a small note there saying, hey, enter your name as on your Aadhaar card.
That is messed up.
So that your friends can find you.
That is messed up. I mean, okay. Now I'm... so that's the one bridge too far for me as well.
But the whole point is, hey, they want real names. And your Aadhaar probably has your real name. So
fair enough.
It's just creepy because we think of Aadhaar as creepy. But otherwise, it's like...
I don't think of Aadhaar as that creepy. I think... I mean, like, I know that there are security issues and implementation issues. I understand that. I get that, right? But having said that, I think having a universal ID for the entire country, on which you can build other services, there is value in that. And I mean, like, as a country, we need that kind of thing. I think we do.
Yeah, and which brings me to the stuff which has worked, right? The UPI stuff, Beam. All of this has really worked.
Very
It's changed the way, I mean, a lot of people still aren't doing it. But technically, over the past year, we've moved from a archaic system of online banking to one which is instant, mobile, fast, easy to use, easy to share. Like for people who wanted all of this, it's been awesome.
It is.
The bigger challenge obviously is getting people who still love cash to do all this, but that's a separate challenge altogether.
I mean, like that there's always going to be people like that.
So the tech exists now. The backbone exists, and it was the government to solve it, not a private startup or not a private bank.
Nobody else could have.
Yeah.
Nobody else could have. Nobody else could have put together what they've done in this. Well, was there some... I think I remember reading something else recently about how Aadhaar is the third platform with 1 billion people on it.
Yeah, probably.
After Facebook and something else, and it's the only one that got 1 billion people on it in the amount of time it did, like in the very, very short period of time.
I think there are lots of charts like this.
Huh?
I think I see one chart with something or the other. But yeah, fastest to...
I'm clearly a Gujarati on all
million.
the Gujarati mailing lists so that I get all the Pro Narendra Modi stuff.
Yes. Yeah. I'm sure you have amazing stats of how good demonetization was.
Well, I don't think that's possible. I mean,
how are the Gujaratis divided on that?
On demonetization?
Yeah.
I think anybody with any economic sense thinks that it's a stupid-ass, dumbass thing. But anybody who is like, Modi, Hriday Samrat thinks it's like, okay, what he said goes.
Yes, pretty much.
So, but anybody with a lick of sense is like, nah, this demonetization thing was just the dumbest thing ever.
Yeah, I think we're back to square one with cash. I think maybe
it
it did a blip.
I don't think even it did a blip. I don't know a single person who lost cash. Not a single person.
Oh, yeah, probably, but I do know a company which did really well, and that was also another thing which happened this year, which is the Paytm story.
That was a...
Paytm is pretty much is like a verb now.
Yeah.
It's
no, the demonetization was what kind of...
It sort of put them on the map.
They
already were on a great trajectory. And I think the last milestone they hit just as this year is wrapping up is that their app is now the first payments app or first app in India to go to 100 million downloads on the Play Store.
Amazing.
So,
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
No, and I mean, so the ways people use Paytm is also kind of crazy, right? You use it for everything now.
Yeah.
You use it for your tickets. You use it for flights. You use it for all kinds of stuff, all kinds of shopping. I don't, but all right, I'm not going to name him because, but one of our ex-guests who is also a poker fan uses it to settle poker debts amongst their.
I'm sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, it's really kind of.
It's hit the mainstream.
Yeah.
I think what they're doing is they're diversifying.
Yeah.
They are going, they're using the length and breadth of their reach to sort of, diversify in the services they're offering. Whether or not it's linked, I mean, everything's linked to payments, right?
Yeah.
So technically you could, and they are selling tickets of all kinds. They're helping you shop. They're going to help you very soon, like manage your money. And I mean, they're becoming a bank.
I think they already got their approvals,
so
right?
they're already bank. So there's a whole bunch of stuff. I think the way it's risen is great. I really hope that they'll be one of those iconic brands which will lead this going forward.
I hope so. I think they might be already there. I mean, like,
they're pretty much there.
Yeah.
They're pretty much there. I think we'll only see more and more to come from them. Pretty much unstoppable at this point, right?
What do you think of the e-commerce stuff that Paytm's doing? I mean, like, do you think that they have a chance against Amazon, Flipkart, etc., etc.? Funnily
enough, I mean, this year was also Flipkart's sort of comeback year with their huge funding announcement. So they have something going for them, right? Amazon is killing it, but I mean, I really hope, like you also said, Amazon doesn't become the Amazon of India, right?
Yeah, we don't want a monopoly here. The competition is good.
Yeah. So even, we have competition in every sector. I think if that happens in India, there's a chance for a 1 and a 2 for sure, and maybe a third. Maybe Paytm's going to be a close third.
So I think
it's not going to be Snapdeal.
No, it's not going to be Snapdeal. It probably might not even be ShopCluse.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think the idea that so in India we're still so far down in terms of what e-commerce is as a percentage of the total retail pie that I think we're really, really far way away from having it be a one player kind of thing, right?
Exactly.
In the US they are much further along, right? So I mean, like, I think Amazon is like a good chunk of retail. In the US.
I think it's valued more than Walmart anyway.
I think it is. But I think what that does is that kind of lends itself more to a winner-takes-all situation than what we have in India. Also, I think in India, some of the, when Amit was on, right, he was talking about the local commerce and stuff like that. I think the potential of that in India is much, much stronger than it is in the US because we don't have as great infrastructure as they do over there, right? So delivery timelines and stuff like that can become a little more complicated if you're working from a centralized national brand as opposed to if it's something which is a little more local, right?
Yeah.
So
interesting that you mentioned delivery because even that's one of the things which I think a lot of companies like Amazon are innovating on, learning from here. Like we don't have zip codes.
Yeah.
So they literally need to know how to...
Ghar ke baaju mein.
Yeah. And I was just reading about how in the US, while addresses are often great, there are still some complexities to addresses which... they're not fundamentally designed for. Like, you do have some homes in cities where the address is on a certain street, but the door is on another street.
Right.
Like, there are ways. There are these... Yeah.
Our address is SV Road, but we're actually on Karpali Road.
Exactly. So there are... And India is full of that, right? Yeah. So from day zero, India had... whoever's coming here has to address those challenges because that's the way we have been built and that's the way... our addresses are also referenced. And it's an interesting point for not delivery of packages maybe today because there's still a human involved. But, or even for Uber pickups because, hey, that was anyway map-based. So if you plot the pin right, it's going to be fine.
But actually, there's some interesting stuff around Uber pickups as well. Continue and I'll come back to that.
Yeah, because what I was reading was that, hey, when the Uber pickup becomes a self-driving car...
Right.
How do you tell the car? Right now, you can still call the Uber and say, hey, show up. Don't show up there. Just turn around and you'll find me and I'm standing here. And you can do that last mile coordination. Right. And we're used to doing that in India anyway. But what happens when there's no one to talk to?
So I was reading an article about the artificial intelligence being applied to Uber for what's happening in basically what they call the Asian megacities, Bombay, Delhi, Bangkok, Tokyo. And basically what happens over here, so like in most of the other Western markets, right, the US, UK, Australia, Europe, etc., U-turns are easy to get.
Yeah.
In India, so this happened to me just day before yesterday. This happened to me on Tuesday morning. I had a meeting at Kemp's Corner. I met somebody at the Starbucks over there next to the Dulali, and I called an Uber. Now, the guy was coming down the Malabar Hill slope, and by the time he saw my thing, he had already crossed the Kemp's Corner signal and reached Pedder Road. So then he had to go all the way to Jaslok Hospital, take a U-turn, and come back to get me, which was basically, it meant I was waiting for about 20 minutes. And if you're a driver and you're spending 20 minutes out of your 10-hour day on a pickup where somebody was exactly like 3 seconds away from you and now is 20 minutes away from you, that's a massive kind of problem for you, right? So that is something that they're using a lot of AI to kind of understand what is happening in these big cities in terms of
that does happen in Western cities too, Ro. It's especially on highways. If you miss an exit, you're
highway
pretty
is
much
different, but I mean, like, you don't get picked up on a highway, no?
Yeah.
So if you miss an exit on a highway, then you're screwed. I mean, like, I've driven like 30 miles.
Exactly.
Yeah, to get the next
But
exit.
within cities, it's probably easier because the grids are simple.
They're mostly gridded cities, right? I mean, like, once you get outside of... I think the only major city that I can think of that isn't gridded at all is Boston.
Oh, really?
In the US. I mean, like, otherwise there's at least some form of grid in most places, right?
Yeah.
Boston is a really old city, so that's almost completely ungridded.
Yeah.
But New York is completely gridded. Philly is probably half gridded. Washington is completely gridded. Baltimore is fairly gridded.
So
I know
all of
mostly,
these.
most of the Northeast is
But
gridded.
so bringing conversation back to self-driving cars, what do you think is going to happen there with self-driving, not just self-driving, maybe even electric?
So electric is really interesting, right? I've always had this big bear up my ass about like the fact that the Indian government was not more supportive of hybrids.
Yeah.
But they've jumped hybrids and going straight to electric. I think that might be a mistake. I think hybrids might be a better solution.
Really? I think electric is here now. I think we're ready
We
for
don't
it.
have the generation, we don't have the power generation capabilities really to support electric vehicles on mass basis. That's my thinking, right? What happens with a hybrid is the petrol engine at least gets you started. Right. And then after that, the electric, the battery behind it keeps charging as you're moving.
So maybe not for personal vehicles, but definitely for commercial, definitely for small transportation. Like I think electric buses, electric rickshaws, electric cabs.
I think everything should be electric in the long run. It's just a question of do we have enough power generation capability?
We'll get there. I think that's more of an infrastructure challenge, but I think we're not so far behind on that.
Because if we can get to electrical completely, then nothing like it, right? Because think of our air.
Yeah, exactly, right?
It is
so we're
disgusting.
messed up.
Yeah, so I mean, like, if we can get to electric entirely, that would just be amazing.
So I know a lot of startups in 2018 will definitely have some sort of electric. If they're in transportation, they'll have something electric, like Ola's have it. Anyone else in transportation will have some electric strategy. But it brings me to another interesting thing I was just talking to someone about is what's with the cycle fad? What do you think bike sharing is? Do you think it will work in India? Because
I don't
two
even
or
think
three companies have jumped on it.
It's not really even working in China, is it?
Well, it's working for a few companies. The other guys who started have all killed
I
it.
seen like all these kind of wastelands of like Chinese bikes and stuff?
Yeah.
So I mean,
but then it's working for the guys who led the.
Okay, fair
like the
enough.
two major ones are working.
I don't know, man. I mean, like,
I don't think we're a biking country.
I don't think we're a biking country, but more importantly, I don't know that the value of a bike is high enough for sharing to really be a viable kind of thing over there.
That's
you
true.
know, I mean, like, we're not buying 25,000 rupee bikes here. We're buying in my last office, when the peon of the office needed a bike, we bought him an Atlas cycle, which cost like $850 here.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
So if you can pedal that, why not pedal?
Why would you? Yeah, I mean, like, and
Why would you pedal an electric version of it? Yeah, that's true.
you know, I don't know, man. I am a little unsure of how that's really going to play out in India.
For someone who doesn't use a cycle on a regular basis already, I don't think they would choose to.
Yeah, I mean, like, and I think value is a big part of it, right? Whenever you're talking about any of these kind of shared economy kind of things, right? I think the value of the good that you're sharing kind of has an impact on what is the possibility of something like that being something valuable to a large number of people, right? By not having to buy a car right now, there are probably a couple of thousand people who have saved like 10 lakh rupees each.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's real in some ways, right? Not having to buy a bike.
Yeah, I don't think that's a viable solution.
Yeah.
I rather still believe in, I know we spoke to Jonathan about how second-hand
I think that's a much more interesting space.
Yeah, buying and sharing.
Electric motorcycles.
Yeah.
I think that's a much more interesting space, right?
Totally going to happen.
That. All right. I think we're almost done, right? So let me ask you one last question. As the most prolific Twitter user I know.
Oh my God.
Has the 280 characters changed your life?
No.
It has not?
No, I think I've done like 2 tweets so far which are exceeding, and that too just because I could.
Just because you could?
I mean, I could have easily split that into a few tweets, but I mean, okay, coming to Twitter, right, since we actually do so much on Twitter, we speak to a lot of feedback comes in from Twitter. Where do you think it's headed? How was this year was just a whole bunch of random stuff from Twitter?
I think Twitter is what Twitter is. Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's indispensable, but at the same time, it's making some money. Is it even growing?
I think it did reasonably well this year, right? I think this
but
was
are
a year.
Users growing? Users aren't growing at a fast enough pace.
But I think Twitter is what Twitter is, right? I don't think that Twitter is going to really change. I don't think that Twitter is the kind of place where our parents are just going to come and hang out on Twitter, right?
Yeah.
I don't see it as that. Like, I mean, like my mom's on Facebook. I'm sure your parents are on Facebook.
Yeah.
Facebook is a much more kind of...
or Instagram now.
Or Instagram, yeah. But those feel like places which are much more friendly for people who are not... who don't want to participate in the conversation, right? Whereas Twitter is for people who want to kind of, know what's going on right now and interact with people in real time. And, it definitely it feels like there's a very specific kind of person who wants to use Twitter. And you look at the kind of people on Twitter, there are those kind of people, right? I mean, you go through anybody's Twitter feed, right? And I mean, you'll see just bunch of snarky, nonsensical, or informative, or just straight up funny kind of stuff. That's the kind of stuff that works on Twitter. That's the kind of stuff that you want on Twitter too. Yeah. So I think, it is what it is. I don't see it changing dramatically. I don't think it should change dramatically.
Let's hope not.
Not everything needs to have 1 billion users. Things are okay with 300 million.
But interesting things do break on Twitter, and I don't know if... we missed talking about one thing which is definitely going to be top of mind for a lot of people who had nothing to do with tech all this while, which is Bitcoin.
Oh, yeah.
Crypto. I think a lot of people, I'm sure in your Gujarati community, a lot of people who never touched technology or anything to do with
Amit,
fintech.
Tell me about Amit, what is it? Bitcoin. How do I buy Bitcoin? How do I buy Bitcoin? I heard it's $20,000. How can I buy Bitcoin?
Exactly. So... I think we're going to see quite a bit of that. I think I'm not in it. I'm not observing
in it either. I look at what's going on over there, but I'm not in it.
But it's fun times ahead
for
crypto.
But no, it is... listen, there's so much activity in this space. There's so much stuff going on. There are all these initial coin offerings, which are of going nuts, right? So, there's just so much stuff happening over there that I have no idea how it's going to play out. Right? Because all of this stuff in some ways seems contradictory, but at the same time, it's all in the same kind of vein. And it's just...
You know what? We should try doing an ICO for the show.
Yeah?
Why not?
One.
Let's do a Shunya One coin.
Shunya One ICO? The Shunya coin.
Yes. Yeah. It's worth nothing. You pay 1, but it's worth 0. So, hey, people will buy it.
Yeah, I think they will.
We should take a poll on Slack about how many people will
buy our Bitcoin?
Buy the Shunya coin.
Yeah? All right.
All right. So, looking forward to 2018, I think that's a good wrap. We have a whole bunch of guests lined up for the year. A lot of interesting people and interesting conversations coming your way.
Yeah,
so, happy New Year, everyone. And let's keep the show going.
Yeah, for sure.
All right.
एक्सक्यूज मी भैया, एक्सक्यूज मी।
बोलिए मैडम।
मेन्यू में क्या है?
मेन्यू में सीन अनसीन है, पॉडकास्ट है, ऑन कोर्स है, साइरस है, मेड इन इंडिया, रीडिस्कवरी प्रोजेक्ट, एम्पावरिंग सीरीज, सेक्स वैक्स है, IVM लाइक्स है, सिंप्लीफाइड है, कीपिंग इट क्वियर है, टिंग्स एंड डेस्टिनेशन है, माय नेबर सकरबर्ग है और द फैन गराज है। आपको क्या चाहिए?
एक बार रिपीट कर देंगे क्या?
रिपीट नहीं करता हम। आप जाओ ivmpodcast.com पे और सुनो ये सब, या फिर डाउनलोड करो उनका ऐप, सब आपकी उंगलियों पे।